Greetings, everyone. Thanks for coming out to yet another Brony Debates Live. I hope you're all having a wonderful Friday and choosing this live stream over that lame online convention that's going on right now. We're totally better than all of them. Am I right, guys?
No comment.
The crickets.
Yeah, you should totally go to LooneyCon.
I'm just...
I mean, yeah, Pony Fest? Who would go to that? There's so much better places like LooneyCon.
All right. So, yeah, I'm glad to have you guys on, and I hope we're all having a good night, like I said. So, tonight we are tackling a suggestion from Princess Heather Blossom, and to quote her, it was, "Were the elements of harmony a good plot device, or were they just a useless MacGuffin?" So that's what we're going to be discussing tonight. Heather, would you mind giving us some more details into what you were thinking there when you made that suggestion? Like, how do you want this conversation to go?
Well, when I had posed that Twitter comments for your stream, I was mostly just pulling it out of my butt, thinking, like, what's something that sounds smart to talk about? And so I was just like, elements of harmony, are they useful or not? But now that I've had more time to think about it, there are plenty of ways we've seen the elements of harmony used as, like, like an end-all to defeat the big bad of the season or whatever. And what I want to hear is that, do you think this was put into the show seamlessly, like it seemed like a very reliable and efficient tool, and it served all its metaphorical purposes, or do you think like it was just something that felt more shoehorned in or was pointless?
All right, so that's a pretty good starting point, and to either agree with you or disagree with you, and for us to hopefully fight with each other and make a nice, interesting live stream for people to listen to, I brought on our usual guy, DJ Skywalker. How are you doing tonight, sir?
We are here to have fun and forget about the horrible things in the world, yes.
Yep, that's what we do. Ponies are pretty good at that. And I also brought a guy who, if you have never watched his content before, what the heck are you doing with yourself? His link is in the description. The Looney Turtle, go check him out. He's made some amazing videos that are very analytical and very critical in the past, so I wanted to hear what he thought of this topic as well. Looney, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. Just, I've basically been doing a panel after a panel today.
Have you been on all of them?
No. Some of them wanted it recorded. Others, like the show guests, industry guests, they wanted help with the panel, so I was hosting it on my YouTube for them. And, yeah.
All right. That sounds pretty good. So, with that being said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That and a lot of technical issues.
Yeah. Well, technical issues come with an online convention, but as long as you're handling them, then we're doing pretty good out here. So, yeah. With all that being said, I got to give a quick shout out to all of my very generous supporters on Patreon, especially those guys on the $10 and up tier. Two of which are in this stream tonight. Miss Princess Heather Blossom, DJ Skywalker, Shady Oak Ministries, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Sodden, Girder, Senko, Jennan, Kellogg, Kyle Christensen, Stephen A. Wilson, Erick, in the Equestrian City Heroverse series, and we actually got a new one this week, and his name is Rein-Kun. Yeah, so I got to make sure I add him to the list as well. Man, every time that list gets a little bit longer, the bills get a little bit easier to pay. So anyway,
and the smile on his face gets wider and wider.
Yep,
can't quite see it yet, but we're getting there.
Yep, all of my patrons make my continued content creation possible and easier. Helps me with those editors when I need them. Helps me make those ends meet on the bills. So if you want to be on the show, I would love to have you. We just need to get you on the Patreon for as little as $1 a month. And with that being said, let's jump into it. So, Heather, since you suggested the topic for tonight, I'd like to hear from you first. What do you think about the usefulness of the elements of harmony?
All right, I was just upping my volume a little bit because everyone's coming in a bit soft on my end, but no problem.
Yep.
Can you hear me all well?
We can hear you just fine.
Okay. So, I was on the fence for the longest time because thinking back, like it goes both ways. Like they were very effective in like the first episodes and some of the earlier times they were used, and as we got further and further along in the series, the elements of harmony were no longer needed. That we saw that like the elements of friendship can just manifest themselves in beings themselves. They don't exactly need that conduit anymore. But when they were used, I think they were used pretty effectively. So I'm sorry to say I'm kind of wishy-washy. It all depends, I suppose, with the context of the plot. Because I'm thinking back to the last several finales we've had, and the elements of harmony haven't been as integral.
Okay, and well, I got some thoughts about that, but first I'd like to hear from Looney. What do you think about the usefulness of the elements of harmony?
So, I believe that they, in practice, they have not been a useful plot device, or they haven't been useful in the context of the show. Because they haven't been properly utilized. But in the beginning few episodes that we have seen the elements of harmony used, I believe they were used very effectively. With the first episode, with the pilot episode, they definitely centered around this story of the mythical artifacts that would eventually save the day, and they built this world level by level by having this MacGuffin in the world. And then in the Return of Harmony, they utilized it again. It's the catalyst of the conflict for the episode, and the way that they use the elements of harmony in that episode is very effective. I enjoy how they implemented it, but as we got further into the series, it started becoming less of something that could be used as a plot device and more of just, I mean, we need to beat this big villain. Let's just shoot him with a laser. And so the elements of harmony started very strong with these episodes based around the conflict of these MacGuffins, and then later it just became a super-powered laser, and that's all that you ever use it for. It doesn't. It isn't a big part of the episode. It's just, it's there. They use it.
Interesting. And DJ, what do you think?
I think they're a great narrative tool for the series. They've always been part of it, even to the point where they weren't around anymore. It started in the beginning as the quest was to find them, and through the seasons after, it was their different uses. Reversing the effects of Nightmare Moon, sealing Discord, what was it? Having to return them to their home to protect Equestria, and that is where they remained until they were needed again out of Last Resort, which I believe is a great use for weapons, because these are weapons that are not meant to be used on a constant basis. They are, when you have no other choice, you bring these out.
Alrighty then. So, Heather, did anybody bring up any points that you want to rebut?
I gotta say, nothing's hitting me immediately. Go to your thoughts first.
Okay, so I thought the elements of harmony were a very good tool to start off with. They had the legend around them. They were great as not necessarily a MacGuffin, because the purpose of a MacGuffin is to mislead you. It's supposed, the definition of a MacGuffin is for something to seem important to the plot, but ultimately does not play a large role in the plot. So, by that definition, especially within the first anywhere between 2 seasons and 5 seasons, the elements of harmony were actually very important to the plot. Especially at the very beginning when they were used to bring the universe together. When they were used to banish Nightmare Moon, and then Twilight had to understand the power of friendship in order to be able to activate them with her friends to defeat Nightmare Moon again. It did get a little bit repetitive at the beginning, because in Season 1 we had to find the elements of harmony. Then in Season 2 we had to find the elements of harmony again. So, but then after that, the changelings started attacking, and Celestia said, "Go get the elements of harmony." Well, they failed. In case anybody forgot, they did not get to the elements of harmony before the changelings overwhelmed them, and then it ended up being Cadence and Shining Armor taking power from each other to be able to repel the changelings. After that was Season 3, where the elements of harmony didn't really play a part in the plot, but it did come into, not for the opening anyway, but they had a huge plot in Magical Mystery Cure, even if it didn't make any sense. The whole point was they got mixed up and we had to unmix them. Season 4, the Tree of Harmony was dying, and that was what was keeping the Everfree North, I almost said Everfree Northwest like a dingus. the Tree of Harmony was dying, and that was what was keeping the Everfree Forest at bay. So they needed to return the elements of harmony so that wouldn't happen, and then they were able to fix the Plunder Seeds issue, and then that was a question of what are we going to do without our nuke anymore. So and then at the end of Season 4, it turned out that they were a part of the Tree of Harmony and could call on it through the keys, and it kind of fused into them. So, major roles up until the end of Season 4, but then we get into Season 5, where we get villains that can't be defeated by the elements of harmony. So I've said a lot so far. Does anybody have anything to say in response?
Well, so with a Canterlot Wedding, the elements of harmony were used as hey, this is going to be the thing that saves the day. But they subverted expectations by having the main six unable to get to it, and then introduced another power in the world, the magic of love. And I feel that would have been a better thing to utilize, is maybe there are other things that can save the day. But by having the elements of harmony so reoccurring, I feel like it diminished the value of it, like the usefulness of the elements of harmony.
Okay, but if they were more prevalent in the plot, then or less prevalent in the plot, then we'd be asking questions like, well, if the elements of harmony are so powerful, how come we're not going to them first?
That is a good question.
Right. Does anybody else have anything to say to that?
Well, honestly, were they really used that much? I know it's become kind of a whole big joke, but were they really used that much? They were used in the Season 1 premiere, the Season 2 premiere, the Discord episode, the Season 3 finale, the Season 4 premiere, and then disappeared until Season 7.
They also did have a finger on the trigger for Keep Calm and Flutter On.
Yeah, the Discord episode.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I meant.
Okay.
So that's 5 times in the first 3 seasons. Well, first 4 seasons.
Yep. But then you got
that's already nearly 100 episodes, and they've only been used a 20th of the time.
But that plays in. Doesn't that play into what you were saying, that that they're a last resort kind of thing?
Exactly.
Okay, so Heather, what do you think?
seems to me, looking at the big picture of it, that it looks like they were trying to phase out the elements of harmony because, well, we saw it a few times that the elements of harmony aren't necessarily needed to throw magic laser beams at people. You can just kind of shoot that from your heart now. So maybe in the context of the show, as seasons progress, we didn't need them anymore. And maybe that was just the writer's way of phasing them out. So I guess the show evolved past them, I want to say.
So, Heather, in your opinion, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Like, how well did they handle that?
They probably handled it very well because I did not notice. Well, then again, a lot of stuff flies over my head. But I don't know. I guess from going to point A to point Z, which is where we're at, we're in the aftermath of Z. I think that might have been handled as efficiently as it could, seeing as how many hands this show gets thrown into.
Okay.
Well, maybe here's a potential talking point. Were the elements of harmony too powerful to begin with? Because usually when you have a show about magic and powerful magic users, you build up the stakes, you build up the amount of things that they can do. But with the elements of harmony, we're essentially starting with a last resort button that they can push at any moment and could excuse any villain or defeat any threat that comes up. So could it be argued that they, by introducing it so early in the series, it wasn't as effective as it could have been had they saved it for a later episode?
So define effective for me.
Effective as a storytelling device.
Okay. Heather, what were you about to say?
I was going to say, you have a point, because the only flaw we see in the Elements of Harmony that's ever, had them not work is when the main six or the element bearers are no longer harmonious, like when Discord discorded everybody, or when Fluttershy refused to use her element. Those are the only times the elements couldn't help because the main six weren't in sync.
Or when they were locked away in a Canterlot wedding.
Exactly, that's the only thing. You have to actually have them in your hands, and the people using it have to all be in agreement. So those are the only two weaknesses I can think of with these artifacts. So perhaps a bit too powerful. I don't know.
Well,
I would have hated it more if they came up with a whole bunch of excuses of why, the elements, if it was a Dragon Ball Z thing, the elements can fix this. No, wait, the elements can't fix it this time because of whatever. We have to make the elements stronger or some crap.
Well, Dragon Ball Z isn't a good comparison for anything plot-wise.
They keep just raising the stakes.
Well, not just raising the stakes, but there's compilations of plot holes where sometimes even in the same episode they contradict themselves just because Toriyama never paid attention to what he was doing. The
seat of his pants. That's just Toriyama.
Yeah, which, doesn't work for a story like Dragon Ball Z. Anyway, back to the Elements of Harmony here. What you just described, Heather, was the same weakness that every weapon has. It does now. What you described of it would get annoying if they were never able to pull them, and just constantly wrote them off. Which is essentially what they did to the princesses, which should have been the first line of defense. There was always a reason why Celestia couldn't rise to the occasion, which did get a little bit annoying sometimes. But beyond that, whenever we pulled the Elements of Harmony, it was always for a very good reason, and when pretty much nothing else worked. Erick, for example, in order to defeat Erick, they had to use the elements of harmony. Not just that, but take it up to the next power level to revitalize the Tree of Harmony to begin with, and have it fuse with the main six, so that that way it got rid of the weakness that it had of, we need to keep them locked away in a safe that takes too long to get open. when we have an invading force now. And saying that makes me flash back to all of my self-defense classes and all of my home defense classes, and why so many people hate the idea of needing to keep your gun in a safe. But that is a completely different well, I don't know if it's completely different, but you get what I'm saying. It's a very real life parallel that we have. So what do you guys think about that? So what I'm getting at here is yes, they were rarely used, but that just plays into what DJ was saying, is that you shouldn't use them unless absolutely necessary.
But the argument that I'm trying to pose is that they were used too much in the context of the show because they were introduced too early. Because, first episode, we're introduced to this powerful MacGuffin, powerful artifact, where it might have served the story better if they waited for that Tyrek episode to introduce this concept, and instead used something less powerful, less understandable to begin.
And I think it was better that they established that they had this ability, and then wrote complications around it. And I felt like the complications they wrote around it were pretty balanced and helped keep the stakes in place without the question of okay, why don't they just get the elements of harmony, but not also reaching the Celestia problem of why are these things so useless. So what do you guys think about that? Let's get a tiebreaker on this.
I think Looney would have a point if there were more instances in the show where the elements would have been useful. Because My Little Pony is not the kind of show that needs the OP super weapon for every confrontation. Sure, we had our antagonists, but they were more day-to-day annoyances than anything world-shattering or super life-threatening.
You're right. It was a mostly slice-of-life show. The big villains only came up once a season, if that. Half the time, the main cast were their own villains.
At times where they were necessary, they were impeded. Discord, the first time they were used, Nightmare Moon tried to stop them, but Twilight figured out how they worked, so they were able to win. In the second one, Discord knew how they worked, so he hid them. He prevented their use and tried to break them up. They were able to get past that obstacle. With the changelings, they blocked them completely and they were unable to reach the elements. With the Discord, when Discord returned, he was using his own friendship. He was using the friendship with Fluttershy to make the elements not work at all, even though the friendship eventually took him over and his plan completely backfired in his face. In season 4, the season 3 finale, Twilight messed with them. Accidentally, but she still messed with them. So again, it wasn't that the elements weren't needed, it's just they were being misused in that instance. And in season 4's premiere, they needed to be returned to once they came in order to keep balance. And even taking them out back in season 7, there was a huge threat that the elements could be destroyed and the tree could go wild again. The tree could die. And it's one big threat versus one bigger threat. Mm-hmm. So that was a huge dilemma in and of itself.
Actually, in that respect, I think they definitely overstayed their welcome with the elements of harmony. I think season 3, that finale, should have been the last time that we really took that artifact seriously, and instead move on to a more powerful force that the characters themselves are developing.
But isn't that exactly what they did starting with season 4?
Well, they introduced the rainbow power, which was sadly illegal.
Which is basically the elements of harmony, but now they can control it, which I'm not a huge fan of that development.
Why not?
because it's essentially taking the artifact and instead just putting it in the characters, rather than them developing a power that's equivalent to the elements. Like
Well,
they're gifted this power from the tree that has the elements, rather than developing a new, more powerful way of defeating the villains. Or
but isn't that what they did in season 9?
Yes, it's season 9, but like I'm talking about way back in ends of season 3 is where they could have like moved past the elements of harmony, but they didn't. So it might have just the power of the tree and the power of the elements kind of overstayed its welcome after that point.
Heather, what do you think?
Just kind of mulling it over, trying to think of it in the grand scheme of things. This is a lot of food for thought.
So,
yeah, because especially with the Discord episode, like the elements of harmony made it into an in-season episode. So after that point, it kind of gave me the impression that they are more mundane compared to what they used to be. So the characters could then find something else or develop better powers to move past that, like the elements of harmony being necessary for their villains.
And I can see that. I was gonna make a statement where it's like, it kind of goes back to my other statement of like how the elements were being phased out to focus more on the power within the characters than the conduit of the elements of harmony making it shine.
So with that, I sort of agree with you, Heather, but consider this. Now that we're at the end of the series and we have that broad perspective, were they really being phased out, or were they being further developed, but in a more behind-the-scenes way? Because take season 5 into consideration, where we weren't able to use the elements of harmony to defeat Starlight Glimmer. That would have almost defeated the purpose of, because she wasn't being controlled by a nightmare. She wasn't the antithesis of harmony, so she couldn't be turned to stone. She just needed to be talked down. And she put the characters in a situation where they would have never been able to call upon the rainbow powers anyway. Did a very effective divide and conquer strategy that almost worked. In season 6, anybody that could have used the elements was also, another divide and conquer strategy from Chrysalis. But then in season 7, we had that risk of the elements of harmony backfiring or killing the tree, and it was a gamble that we had to take. So it would make more sense for the power to come from within. If anything, playing against your point here of phasing the elements out. But then once we got to season 8, we started to see the Tree of Harmony divide its, I don't know if divide, but or also give its power to the Student 6. And I will totally admit it was a tail pull of a Deus Ex Machina at the end of season 8 when the Tree of Harmony just reached out and grabbed all the magic and put it back in Equestria before Cozy Glow could take it all out. But what I'm building to here is season 9, when it took the elements of harmony from the past, present, and future. So the what are they called? The Legends of Equestria, those guys. The pillars, the pillars of Equestria. Took the pillars, the elements of harmony, the main 6, and the Student 6, in order to defeat the Legion of Doom, as we've been calling them. So it's a succession. And then we saw in the last problem that they used that power within themselves to defeat other, off-screen issues. So it was more so not phasing them out, but developing them into a point where they can become more useful. What do you think about that?
I'm seeing what you're saying, but I feel like we're using the elements of harmony and the tree of harmony like they're synonymous or like they're the one and the same thing. The elements of harmony are like, well, if we're looking at this, actually looking at like a picture of the tree of harmony, they're more like the fruits of the tree of harmony's labor. So I wouldn't consider what the tree of harmony did, transferring power to the student 6, the same thing as the elements of harmony, because it doesn't even make it clear what the student 6, like what their elements are, or like even if they have a particular element, because I don't know if it was to you guys, but that wasn't abundantly clear to me. So I really don't count that as like the elements of harmony being like involved in those situations.
Well, from a narrative standpoint, with the way that the moral of the story for each episode had been developing up until we got the student 6, and they had each even slice of life seasonal episode had become more and more complicated in its moral, that we start to see that the elements of harmony, yes, they can be summarized in generosity, kindness, laughter, loyalty, honesty, friendship, but the reason why friendship is the spark that makes them all come together and activate is because you need all of them together. So there is loyalty in kindness, and there is generosity in honesty, and basically what I'm saying here is it's foolish in a way to separate the elements of harmony, because they are all while they do have distinctive traits to a degree, ultimately they are all connected. So that's a very long-winded way of saying the student 6 don't need to have individual elements. Does that make sense?
I suppose it does, but then is it even really like a theme that involves the elements of harmony? It's just harmony as a whole.
Interesting.
I think I have a way of explaining it a little better.
All right, tell me.
Okay, so going off what you were talking about, Brony, the theme I'm seeing is the elements evolved through the show. At the start, they were these physical artifacts, these jewels that represented the sections of harmony, the 6 we all know. As the show went on, it became more and more that the artifacts alone are not the end-all of the elements. When they were put away in Season 4 for the benefit of all, we saw through Season 4 alone that each of the main 6 still embodied the feelings, the point of their elements, which made their connection stronger even with the elements put away. And going through Season 5 and 6, 7 and 8 and 9, we continue to see those traits grow. And it's in Season 7 when I think the elements change in our understanding with the pillars. Because the pillars were not honesty, laughter, generosity, magic. They were sorcery, strength,
valor,
hope. So it's clear that the elements are not specifically kindness, laughter, magic, all that, which I think continues on into the student 6, where the elements have become undefinable. Each of the student 6 has these traits, and as such why the tree chose them with the elements still inside of it. And when the elements were destroyed, it became clear that the elements have gone beyond physical and have become something more, something that is inside these ponies and other creatures. They have become stronger through the creatures, as I'm sure Brony has heard this before. It is not the weapon, but the wielder. I think that is the ultimate thing here. The wielders have become stronger even when the weapon is gone.
Yeah, I teach by that philosophy. Like when I used to teach fencing and I'd get new students, the first thing I would do is I'd hand them a sword and say which part of this is the most dangerous, and they would always point to the blade or the tip or something like that. And then I would do something like, okay, what if I did this move? And then I would do something that would just not involve the blade at all, but you could probably imagine would hurt if it actually hit you. And they so I guess the pommel's pretty dangerous too. Okay, so now I'm going to put the sword on the ground several feet away from me. Is that sword going to do anything to you? No. But what if I, grab you by your collar? So that's exactly right, DJ. The wielder is always the most important part of any weapon. Looney, I haven't heard from you in a little bit. What do you think of all this?
I'd like to re-clarify our question.
Yeah.
What we're trying to answer. So how would you... What specifically are we looking for in the usefulness of the elements of harmony? Useful as a plot device, useful as a part of an episode, part of the series?
I think Heather's original suggestion was as a plot device. Am I mistaken?
Nope, that is correct.
Okay. So take it from there, Looney.
And what does a plot device entail in respect to the show? Like, was it useful in the episodes it was in the stories that it was in, or as a whole in the series? Like, did it develop well?
I think I would say in the series as a whole.
Mm-hmm. So were they useful in the series as a whole? So let's take it example by example. We've got Nightmare Moon, Discord on 2 separate occasions, the Changelings, Tarek, the Plunder Weeds, Sunset Shimmer, Chrysalis again, Starlight Glimmer, the Pony of Shadows, and Pony of Shadows, Cozy Glow, and the Legion of Doom.
Were the elements of harmony used on Starlight? I thought that was just...
No, but I'm sure if the option was there, it would have been considered.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Well, in that respect, as a series whole thing, I think they were... They were useful at the ends. Around the middle part of the series, it doesn't quite seem clear what was going on with the elements of harmony, but on the end, you have Twilight finding them to defeat Nightmare Moon. You have Twilight and her friends getting divided because someone's manipulating their strengths and their connections to these elements, and then the third encounter, we have them completely separated from this MacGuffin, so they can't use it to win the day. So, like, those were very effective uses of it. On the end of the series, the season 7, season 8, season 9, the development that the elements of harmony received was beneficial. It was useful to the narrative of the show and continuing what we had learned about the elements in seasons past. But near the middle of the series, there's not a lot of clarity on what's going on with the elements of harmony or how they're going to go forward with the elements of harmony, because we get the rainbow powers and then we never see them again. We get the Student 6 gaining the power through unclear ways. So it kind of, they start out strong, fumble a bit, and then the elements become important again in the end. But around the middle, I don't see them as the most useful thing for the series.
And this is where you and I have a fundamentally different understanding of what makes a good plot device here, because I can't think of how we would have used the elements of harmony. They wouldn't need it. They weren't needed, so they stayed in the holster. They stayed in the sheath. They were off to the side, and we solved our problems with something that was more practical. The elements of harmony weren't needed for Starlight. They weren't available or even ultimately needed for Starlight to defeat Chrysalis. And I thought it was very well explained how they reached out to the student six there. They were the most harmonious of the whole school.
But during that portion of time, the elements weren't being used. They weren't useful to the show as a whole. It was just something in the background that exists, but only in the middle of the series. Because we go season-long stretches at the beginning where we see the elements of harmony used with these great big foes, and then like for a good portion of the middle of the series, they aren't used. They just disappear essentially.
Foes that were needed for them.
Yeah, but they weren't useful in that period of time. Like they weren't useful to the plot during that time.
So how would you have put them into the plot during that time? What would you have done if, let's say, all the characters and the situations were the same?
Well, so I'm not saying they were necessary to the plot. I'm saying they weren't useful during that period.
Mm-hmm. So if we had a strong beginning and a strong end, and in the middle we had a couple of points where they happened to not be needed, so they weren't used, does that take away from their usefulness? What do you guys think of that question?
Yes.
Okay. So go ahead, DJ.
Well, like I said, it had come to the point where the physical versions weren't necessary. The characters were embodying the traits on their own. They were becoming the elements of harmony.
And Heather, what do you think?
I think I kind of go with DJ's way of thinking that like the elements of harmony were like more or less phased out to be like embodied by the characters themselves. So it's at that point where the elements of harmony weren't. I guess it would also kind of go with your line of thinking that it was kind of behind the scenes developments. In spirit, it's the developments of the elements of harmony.
Mm-hmm. I think the elements of harmony got their most development during Season 8 when the Tree of Harmony was really expanding its roots, and then the Student 6 connected to it. And then even more so during Season 9 when they reseeded and rebuilt the gosh darn thing, and it made a treehouse for them.
Like Twilight said in that episode, the elements are still with us in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
She just didn't know how close it really was.
Yep. So,
but I do get where Looney is coming from. That it can be weird to see such a thing be put away, but narrative-wise, I think that was probably for the best. For it to be put in a place where it can't be removed unless it is absolutely necessary, and the stories around it just didn't require such power, and such power was unusable in other circumstances.
And then in that situation, the only way to use them is if it's absolutely necessary, where they would get their greatest usefulness. Looney, what do you think about all that?
Well, again, like I'm on the caps where the beginning was strong, the end was strong, but the middle, I don't think the elements were necessary. That doesn't mean they were needed for the plot, that they had to be shown during the episodes or used, but it's just like you have those two mountains on the sides with the usefulness of the elements of harmony, whereas the middle, it kind of dips. The usefulness isn't there in the middle.
Okay, so why does that subtract from their usefulness if they happen to go for a period where they're not used because for whatever reasons we talked about?
Because they aren't being utilized. If the show had ended at season 6, then we wouldn't have gotten that good ending. We wouldn't have gotten that development. But it's because the show was stretched to the 9 seasons that we were able to see where that story would go. So that's kind of where I'm sitting. Where if we did a season by season viewing of the show and just ended at a certain point, like the show could have done, it wouldn't have been useful overall. But it's because they were able to have those extra seasons that it became useful again.
Guys, what do you think about that?
Well, I think we have to remember why the elements were put away in the first place. They were put away because if they weren't, it was going to cause destruction. Essentially, they were put back for their place. Their usefulness is continuous as long as they were in the tree. They were keeping Equestria safe just being in the tree. They were serving their ultimate purpose. And
I keep getting brought back to the analogy of equating the elements of harmony to a weapon. Well, take once again, take my sword as an example. I know darn well my sword is a weapon. I know it was originally designed as a weapon. I try not to think of it as a weapon because I've never used it as a weapon. A weapon is meant, anything can become a weapon once it's turned to harm another living being. But my sword is a 3-pound steel bar that I can use to get more physically fit myself and be healthier, and I can teach other people about fitness with it, and I can teach other people about their bodies with it, and if absolutely necessary, then I can protect someone with it. I mean, granted, I might be a couple hundred years too late for that, but yeah, you get what I'm saying here. So, real quick, Looney, what do you got for me?
Well, so by having a sword hanging on the wall, is it useful right now?
If it's
hanging on the wall, not being used, you have no intention to use it.
But does that change the fact that I have used it and that I may very well use it again?
It doesn't, but I'm hung up more on the usefulness, the ability to be utilized, and in that lull between seasons, it was not useful.
So how does that change its overall usefulness?
It detracts a little bit, but I like that they became useful, but I don't believe they were useful as a whole, just for the beginning and the end.
Okay, so let me ask you this before we go into our audience participation segment. When would you have introduced the elements of harmony to make them to get the most possible usefulness out of them?
I would have started with Erick. By the first few seasons, exploring the characters, exploring their strengths, developing their strengths, and then the elements of harmony is the ultimate culmination against this, up to this point, unexpected foe. And then from there, I'd probably explore it a couple of times with the big villains that come up.
But would that not have completely negated that? Then you would have to completely rearrange Nightmare Moon and 3 instances of Discord.
There could be alternate ways to take care of those characters. It definitely have to be a bit of a rewrite, but by saving this most powerful last resort to this point, you'd have to find better, more well-reasoned ways that the characters would resolve these issues through, like the elements of harmony, sure, but through their own use of those elements. And then it culminates in the ultimate power of elements of harmony, and then later develops past that. Like having the
The Tree of Harmony, the Student 6, things like that. Okay.
Yeah, just kind of developing it in a different way.
Yeah. DJ, Heather, what do you guys think of what Looney is saying here?
Honestly, I kind of like it as is. I like the story that they went with, that you have this weapon, it gets its use, it's stopped from being used, and then it's to the point where the weapon needs to be used for something else for the greater good, where you will no longer be able to use it, and as such have to take matters into your own hand, use your own power, and only when there is something that is so great that risking the entire world against this foe is the only way to win is when that they're returned, and it's afterwards, when you're victorious, you're able to return the items, and something greater grows from the items that passes on, and even when the items are no longer there physically, they're still there in their own special way. I kind of like that the story that it went with, where it, in a way, it went past its use. It found a different use in the middle seasons. It needed to be used for something greater. It was like laying them to rest for something extremely important.
Yep.
And they were only brought back when it was the only way where things could get better.
Heather,
and even then, it would have had a great cost.
Heather, what do you think?
I'm not sure how I can build much more onto that, so I guess I can kind of go with a concluding thought here. This is reminding me of a quote from a Marvel movie. Tony Stark said this, and I would think it applies to the elements of harmony. He said, someone once said that the best weapon you can have in your arsenal is one you never need to fire. And he said, I disagree. I think the best weapon you can have in your arsenal is one you only need to fire once. And the elements of harmony were certainly that. They only had to glow up at least one time, and conflict's over. So, overall, I think the elements of harmony served their purpose, and in my opinion, quite effectively. So, I guess that's all I had to say on that.
Alrighty then. So with that, let's move on to the audience participation segment here. So if this happens to be your first time watching Brony Debates, I've been watching the chat, and if I've seen an interesting comment or a good question from one of us, I wrote it down separately for us to address in the last few minutes of the stream here. We've only got a few today. I think some online convention is stealing all of our viewership, and I'm not happy about that. Martin,
well, that and Silver Quill.
Yeah. Martin DeRabi says, does anyone else think that the element's instant fix powers were too overpowered and uninteresting? Personally, I'd rather have the elements weaken evil instead of cure them. Let's start with Looney for that one. What do you think about that statement?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Okay. With Looney's ears turned on this time, does anyone else think that the element's instant fix powers were too overpowered and uninteresting? Personally, I'd rather that the elements weaken the evil rather than cure them, which I think brings horrible implications on the concept of free will. But Looney, I'm going to direct this question to you.
I kind of agree with that. The elements of harmony shouldn't have just reformed them, bada bing bang, we're done. It should have been kind of a, we'll take away your power maybe, and then reform you, like literally help you realize the error of your ways.
Personally, I feel like that's kind of what happened with like Nightmare Moon. Because it was later shown that Nightmare Moon was dealing with a separate entity. So you remove that entity, all that's remaining is, Luna understanding that her family is more important than her jealousy, with Discord being the antithesis of harmony. The only thing you really can do is neutralize it, so it's going to turn to stone. Erick, I honestly don't know how to fully justify that, but
they did kind of pull this idea off with Discord by having him undone and put under that, hey, don't do this or you'll be turned to stone again. like they manually reformed him as opposed to letting the elements of harmony just reform him.
Well, the elements of harmony don't reform. Well, they reform him physically, but they don't. When he comes out of that stasis, he's still freaking Discord.
Yeah. So, well, the elements of harmony restrained him. The elements of harmony stopped him from carrying out the misdeeds that he wanted to carry out, and by doing so, it allowed the main six to reform him properly, to help him realize the error of his ways, which I think is a far more interesting storyline than Luna was possessed by a thing.
Yeah, and if you don't play nice, we're gonna put you back in the cuffs, kind of thing. DJ, what do you think?
Only two that I know that the elements reformed in the show without looking at the comics was Luna and Sunset Shimmer. Everyone else, it either weakened or banished.
I don't even think they reformed Sunset Shimmer. They just kind of neutralized her powers, and then she lost everything and had to come to her senses.
Yeah, T-Rex had all of the magic he drained removed. Discord was frozen. They were going to banish the Pony of Shadows. They didn't even attempt to use them on Cozy Glow. They were just used to get out of the anti-magic portal.
Yeah.
And season 9, they tried to wipe Somber from existence. So
Yeah.
I don't think that's trying to reform there. I think that's attempted murder.
I think it could have been better utilized to reform villains, like to be a gun to their head than a blast that they're hit with.
Well, that's the whole thing about the gun to the head, is that you can pull the trigger and then I just realized mid sentence how gruesome that analogy was, and I am so sorry.
With Discord, it's not a gun to the head. It's more going back to jail than anything than a gun to the head.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
It's either you play nice or you go back to jail.
It's a baseball bat to the kneecaps. That's what it is.
As long as it's non-lethal, we're good.
Where's my money, Bryan? Where's my money?
Heather, what do you think?
I'll get it. I don't have it yet.
Heather, what do you think?
As in regards to that question, it made me think of like a metaphor to put this with, because I didn't like it initially that it would just be something that would like nerf the enemy so that they can be reformed or some crap like that, because I thought of it like, well, that's like saying I don't want this cab to take me all the way to work. I want the cab to drop me 3 blocks off from work so I can walk to work. And I'm like, you know what, on one side that's probably better for your health unless you're running late, but like shows really shouldn't run in like as in we need to get this shit done. Sorry, I said a curse word.
It's okay.
Anyways, but yeah, like, so maybe, but I guess I'm just more like, no, bing bada boom, I want to see a big laser show. Shut up.
All right. Hey, we almost completely forgot about the Dazzlings. That was another sort of elements of harmony moment right there.
Giant avatar.
Kinda.
Yeah.
Actually,
But that's more of the Earth versions.
Do the geodes count as the elements?
I don't know what the Equestria Girls counterparts count as.
If we do count them, then we also
I think they were magically charged rocks that came over from Equestria through one of their apparently many portals, and then were attracted to people. And then were attracted to people who had an inclination towards magic, since Sunset Shimmer brought it over, and then the main 6 of that world were exposed to it, and bonded with the elements of harmony through Princess Twilight. It's a whole freaking thing.
Why did that series have to get canceled? We probably would have gotten the answer in season 3.
You know darn well we wouldn't have gotten the answer, or Flurry Heart wouldn't have had wings, okay?
They said that they had plans.
Yeah,
I believe them. They had plans for Equestria Girls. There were plans.
Yeah, there were.
They didn't even get
plans
to finish season 2.
There were plans. I do not think they involved that. If this show ever did anything, it was raise questions. Okay, moving on here. Paladin Pony T wants to know, hey guys, what are the Student 6's elements? So we kind of touched on that earlier, where my theory was that the Student 6 don't necessarily need to have specific elements, but let's go down the line here. Heather, rapid fire. You got your standard elements of harmony and the student 6. Which ones to which elements?
I've been waiting for this question, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And I want to say that Smolder is honesty, because she had to learn to be honest with herself with the girly stuff.
And she was also pretty blunt with Spike about how to be a dragon type of thing.
Well, yeah, but like I feel like it should have been something we see them develop with. Smolder had to learn to also the brash behavior, but I feel like her lessons are more related to being honest to herself than rather to others, because I feel like the brash nature, it's a given.
Okay.
And I think that Silverstream, obviously, laughter. She's just too good. And I want to say that Gallus is loyalty. He seems to fall on that side of the spectrum. I'm having trouble placing, like, maybe Ocellus is kindness, but what does that leave for Yona is generosity? To which I say maybe, but I'm like, what, am I going to make Sandbar magic? What's magical about that guy?
Well, it's not magic and
turtles are
friendship.
Pretty magical.
Friendship is magic. And it was Sandbar that brought them all together and encouraged them to stay together.
I guess with magical friendship powers, sure, he's magic, everybody. He's going to be the next Alicorn princess.
Frick.
Yeah!
Well, or just end up dating Yona, which may or may not be the next best thing, depending on if you like Yona. I wouldn't want to date Yona.
You know what? Alicorn princess and date Yona. Why not both? Porque no los dos?
Alrighty then.
I'll be the next queen.
Looney, what do you think?
Let's see. So I give kindness to Sandbar, honesty to Yona, loyalty to Smolder, generosity to what's the change? Ocellus, laughter to Silverstream, and I guess that leaves magic for the Griffin.
Really?
He is magically delicious.
Okay.
I was
Heather just has a crush on Gallus. Heather just has a crush on Gallus because he went into the military.
Yeah.
So my justification is all the others I felt fit, and I just kind of gave him magic.
He was left over.
Yeah, he was the one. So yeah, that's kind of the others seem like they would embody those virtues.
Gallus is going to become an alicorn princess. He's going to get a horn on his head and an extra set of wings on his butt.
Yep.
Dude, that would actually look pretty cool if he had like a double set of wings and a freaking horn coming out of his head. That might look cool. Someone draw that. Oh wait, I can draw.
DJ, what do you think?
You AMREL artist.
Honestly, I believe that they're more of an amalgamation, that none of them embody one element. But if I had to pick, honestly, I would kind of go how Looney did, because surprisingly, Looney just listed off exactly the same colors that they were all given during the Season 8 finale.
Mm.
When the Tree of Harmony pulled them out of the portal with Starlight, they all had the colors that Looney just listed off.
Oh.
Ocellus is blue, Yona is orange, Silverstream is pink, Sandbar is yellow, Ocellus is white, and Gallus is covered in purple.
Huh.
I actually think...
And honestly, I think that kind of fits them. And for Gallus, I take it more as the magic of friendship, because he's basically the leader of the group. In almost everything, he's always the one leading them ahead.
And he's also the one who had to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, out of all of the main six, he's a Griffin. He comes from the most, like, beatnik, hate people society.
And an orphan.
Yeah, and an orphan. So he was perfect for Twilight's role. Because especially in what she learned.
The Heartswarming Club episode, where he said that these friends are his family now.
Yeah.
He is the new embodiment of the magic of friendship. Not magic in and of itself. It's evolved.
Mm.
So,
I would have mixed him around a little bit. I'd put Yona as honesty, because she was always the voice of reason in the group. And I'd put...
Looney and I already had Yona as honesty.
Yeah. But Heather had Yona as somebody else, as generosity. But then I don't know where I'd put Smolder. So that's a pretty good question right there. Anyway, we got a couple...
could also see is I could see Smolder as generosity, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, even though she has been brutal, she's been honest, she's been loyal, she's also pretty giving. Unlike most dragons, she gives her all when it comes to her friends. She gave it all when it came to cheerleading.
You know, I'm not to sound a racist or anything, but for a dragon, yeah.
for a dragon.
She's the most generous dragon that's ever lived.
You say there's something wrong with reptiles?
Aren't you technically an amphibian?
Amphibious reptile.
We don't talk about that.
All right, moving on here. Royal Silver. What if the elements of harmony together made a new element due to the heroic actions of the main six, and would it be called the element of valor? And didn't we have an element of valor, and it was one of the pillars?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, so I don't think that's
bravery,
how it works.
not valor.
Okay, well.
No, I'm
almost the
pretty
same
sure
thing.
valor was mentioned.
Somebody get on
That's
Google. I don't feel like doing it.
That's
Looked it up. It was bravery.
Okay. I thought the way they named the pillars were really good, as what they were supposed to be, precursors to the elements of harmony. Because let's say, what was the analog to bravery? Was that loyalty?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to be brave in order to then be loyal. You have to develop bravery before you can develop loyalty. So bravery is a precursor to loyalty, just like it was in the show. I thought, and the same similar thing could be applied to the
healing
rest of
and
them.
kindness.
Yes, exactly.
To get them out so they're fresh in everyone's mind. Strength is honesty. Healing is kindness. Hope is laughter. Beauty is generosity. Bravery is loyalty, and sorcery is magic. Heather, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, on that train of thought, if they're a precursor, and then we move on to the main six, and it's more developed elements, as we move on to the main six, the student six, what would you say they've evolved into if you could give what they are a word for each one?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
That's more difficult because, there's no clear matchup for, because there was a clear matchup. The precursors obviously had a main six character that they correlated to. With the student six, that isn't as easy a connection to make.
I think that plays into the tangent I went on earlier, and how they all kind of mesh together when you get right down to it, because you have the precursors to the elements of harmony, and I always felt like the names for the elements of harmony themselves were perfect as they were. The exact number you need to be. Every time somebody comes up with like a seventh element type of thing, or goes beyond six, they always end up coming up with a name that falls under one or more of the other umbrellas of laughter, kindness, generosity, honesty, loyalty, friendship. So then the next logical step to that would be the blending of all of those elements, which is what I was saying is what I see in the student six.
Yeah, an amalgamation.
But I think there's a ratio of their combinations. You know what I'm saying? So, say you have Gallus, and I think you guys put him in he's been put in loyalty, he's been put in magic. So let's say what's the ratio there? Is he more loyal than he is magical, or like with Smolder, is she more honest than she is loyal? What's the combination of honesty and loyalty?
I don't know. I would put Gallus as more loyal than it is more representing of loyalty. That's what I would put for Gallus.
Loyalty already is a pretty broad term, so it'd be kind of hard to narrow it down even more.
Mm-hmm. Something I heard say by a YouTuber named Ramsey Dewey, and he was talking about different styles of combat sports in the time, or martial arts even, is that, all paths lead to the same summit. When you're looking at the base of a mountain and you are at the base of the mountain, all of the paths look very different, but the closer you get to the top, the more that all of those paths converge to one ultimate goal. And I think that's exactly what we're dealing with here, with the main 6 moving on to the student 6, is the convergence of all of those paths. But I've made that point like 3 times now.
It's become the magic of friendship.
Yep.
In its purest form.
But, what does it really mean?
It means,
okay, hippie.
It means
Listen.
double rainbow all the way across the sky.
Man, that's pretty cool.
Look
But
at
why
that
male
rainbow.
models, though?
All right. Moving on. Last question of the night here. We are a little over time. I'm sorry. What? Did you have something you want to say, Heather?
Guys, you missed it. I
What?
was looking at the stream, and we had been streaming for 69 minutes, but now it's 70 minutes. We missed it.
You're the only one that cares, Heather.
It's no longer nice. Not nice.
Yep. Alrighty then. So, last one. Crimson Glow. Is it possible that the elements are more subjective per generation? I think we were just talking about this. Similar to how words and phrases change in meaning over time. What do you guys think?
That's basically what happened.
Yep. I agree.
The pillars turned into the elements that have conglomerated into the magic of friendship as taught by Twilight Sparkle.
Yep.
Twixie
Right now,
Spricks.
I'm just like putting in my head if I had to like name an element that its main student represented. Like, I'm making a list right now. I'll tweet it.
So, I think that's a good place to call it then.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody for coming out to this 3-on-1 curb stomping of Looney Turtle.
Yep, as is tradition. I was bounced against the wall multiple times.
I'm sorry, Looney. I didn't think it would
feel
be
like we ganged up on you.
yeah, I didn't know that we were all going to gang up on you. I thought there would be a little bit more contention like that than that.
To be
But
fair, I was going back and forth in my head, and I was just like, I don't know.
Yeah, I was.
but that is
Mostly
exactly
me and Brony.
that is exactly why I wanted Looney on, is because I knew that he was going to offer some very interesting but contrary points of view to these things. And I think our differences came down to a more fundamental but subjective the way that we view these issues, these things. So it's, certainly something to think about.
Words, a round of applause for the turtle.
Yep, round of applause for the turtle. Thank you so much for coming out, Looney. It was great to have you on.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Everybody, once you get out of here, if you're not already, go check out LooneyCon. I don't have it linked in the description. I forgot because I'm a terrible friend. But he's easy to find on YouTube, and he's easy to find on Twitter. I'm sure there's some pretty interesting panels going on right now. Looney, anything you can recommend for us?
Hold on one sec while I pull up the schedule. You can go to looneycon.com for more information on LooneyCon, just so that everybody knows that. Right now, which is 8 o'clock, we've got Behind the Chat with Filmer Brony. There's an adult panel going on called Name Searching Newgrounds. The reason that it's got an adult tag is because of the kind of content that's on newgrounds.com. The Gaming Hall is currently doing Rocket League, and our Relax Track is currently doing Movie Night over at the BabsCon Discord server.
Very good. Alrighty then. And if any of you listening would like to get on this show, I would love to have you. We just need to get you into the Patreon Discord server for as little as $1 a month, and from there, you can join into the conversation and come on the show if you want to. If we're talking about something you're interested in, you can also make suggestions for games. Big shout out to all of my very generous supporters on Patreon, especially the people at the $10 and up tier. 2 of them are in the chat, like I said, on the panel tonight, Miss Heather Blossom and DJ Skywalker, as well as Shady Oak Ministry, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Sodden, Girder, Senko, Jennan, Kellogg, Kyle Christensen, Stephen A. Wilson, Reck, the Equestrian City Heroverse series, and Rein-Kun. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. It was wonderful to have you. Go have an amazing weekend. Stay safe. God bless. And say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
DJ with that soundboard. All right, Heather. Did you have fun tonight?
Yeah, it was cool.
Good. It was great having you on. Thanks for the topic suggestions. If you guys want to hang out with us some more, we're doing another stream tomorrow night on Heather Blossom's channel at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to be in there reading the chat. With that, I'm going to call it there. Have a good night. Goodbye, everybody.
Farewell.